Vietnam. And it just was like reading a book.
Jason K. Schrader.
Jason Schrader is Jenny and Heather's brother. Last year, he graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. It was a proud moment, one he wanted to share with the father he last saw in 1975. Jason then was 7 years old.
They're just memories. These pictures when I was younger just makes me realize that I was really there.
Do you remember anything at all about the war?
I remember the bombs over the mountains, the helicopters, the occasional soldier that would walk by our house. I remember the neighborhood pitching in to dig trenches or foxholes for each house, but they seem normal day-to-day things. We tried to make life the best that we could, and I don't think the war distracted from us being kids.
They grew up near Camp Holloway, an American Army base situated at the center of some of the hottest fighting of the war.
Back with some snipers, over.
1973. The last of the U.S. troops pulled out of Vietnam, leaving Vietnamese allies like Heather's father in special peril. He had worked at the American hospital as a pharmacist. He knew time was running out.
There was more bad news from South Vietnam today.
March 1975 marked the beginning of the end. The North Vietnamese Army began their final assault to conquer the country, aimed directly at the central highlands of South Vietnam, where Heather and her family lived.
My father came home and told us that we have to get out of our home right away. Everyone else was trying to get out. There were just people everywhere, and just crazy.
Frantic to move his family to safety, their father came up with a plan, using the only transportation he had.
The whole family was getting ready to go, but my father had a motorcycle, and he could only take 3 of us. It happened to be Heather, Jenny, and I. He left us on the corner with our friend, and the last memory I saw of my father was him driving off the back taillights of the motorcycle into the crowd.
With 3 of his children in the hands of a trusted friend, the father raced home to rescue their mother, 3 sisters, and baby brother. His parting admonishment, "Stay together, I'll be back."
I don't know why I thought that he would never come back, but seeing the chaos around me, I realized I would never see him again.
The evacuation escalated. Helicopters airlifted refugees out of the countryside. As their neighbors fled, Heather, Jason, and Jenny waited for the rest of their family to arrive.
I was crying my head off.
By nightfall, the scene had turned to total panic. Mothers raced from soldier to soldier, frantically searching for children who had been airlifted without them.
Everything would be very chaotic. They told us that we have to leave. We cannot wait for my family any longer.
The children were swept up in a massive accident. Their father had not gotten back in time. Refugees fled every way they could. Desperate parents passed shrieking children to strangers in hopes of saving them. Hundreds of thousands carrying a few personal belongings were heading south to what they hoped would be the safety of Saigon. In the confusion, children separated from their parents struggled to keep up with the others. Hungry and frightened, they were running for their lives. Even the army was in full retreat, drawing enemy fire that hit the refugees.
There was fighting because I can remember people getting killed. Those who got killed with their body were just kind of left where they were killed.
For 2 weeks, Heather, Jason, and Jenny were pushed along with a sea of refugees. A friend who was entrusted with the children found he could no longer take care of them. He handed them over to a priest who brought them to an orphanage in Saigon. There, for the first time, the children realized they were entirely on their own.
My first realization that I was alone, homeless, parentless, was when my sister and I were dropped at this orphanage, and we stood in line with a lot of other kids in the same situation. I remember just having 1 bowl of rice a day and just really having a fear inside my heart that I would never see my parents again.
At the orphanage, Jenny, the youngest of the three, became ill. Doctors decided to fly her to the United States for immediate medical attention. Heather was asked to make the hardest decision of her young life. Would she and Jason stay behind or go?
I didn't feel like I should say no because I couldn't bear the thought of having my baby sister going across the sea alone by herself. So I went with her, with my brother.
How old were you when you had to make this decision?
I was 10 and a half.
The three children joined hundreds of war orphans at Saigon's Tan Son Nhut Airport, terrified children who were leaving the only life they knew. President Gerald Ford launched Operation Baby Lift and sent a huge C-5 transport plane to bring the children to the United States.
These 2,000 Vietnamese orphans are all in the process of being adopted by American families. This is the least we can do, and we will do much, much more.
They processed all of our papers, and we were scheduled to be on one airplane, and the last minute we were changed to the other one.
Heather, Jason, and Jenny were taken off the C-5 transport plane, but their personal records, their family history, remained on board. 15 minutes into the flight, the plane crashed in a muddy rice field. 78 children perished. By sheer luck, the three children were not on board, but all of their paperwork was destroyed. After the crash, where were you left as far as your identity?
No records, no files on me. I was just a nobody.
The three displaced kids were finally flown to safety, just days before the capital city of Saigon fell.
I guess I took it for granted that things would be okay from now on.
These home movies were taken just weeks after their arrival in the United States. Heather was 10 years old, her sister Jenny 2.5, their brother Jason 7.
We had told them then, this is going to be your home. We just knew we were to make a home for these kids. And they're our kids. They became our children.
The children were adopted by Jean and Frank Schrader, a Denver couple with 5 children.
To think someone's going to replace my parents, that was really hard at first. But I think I just felt really fortunate that I wasn't in an orphanage again, and here's some new people who's going to take care of us, who's going to love us.
Back in Vietnam, the North Vietnamese celebrated their victory. Their new communist government would quickly isolate the country from the Western world, making efforts to locate the children's birth parents futile.
What I heard about communism, I think that's when I hoped that my family were dead, so they didn't have to be under the communism, their control. I think that just helped me to be able to go on. But I really thought that all of them were killed.
The children grew up with all the advantages a suburban American family could offer. They all attended private schools. Heather took violin lessons. Jason excelled in sports. And Jenny made straight A's. She was valedictorian of her high school. In 1985, just before Christmas, the 3 Schrader children became U.S. citizens. They were successful immigrants in a new land. They could have closed the book on their past. Their lives were moving ahead. The next year, Heather married. Her first son was born in 1987. As her family grew, she felt compelled to find out once and for all what happened back in 1975. Why hadn't her father come back? Was anyone in her family searching for her? Were her parents still alive?
I just knew that I had to do something for my family. Even if I find out that they're gone, then that's an answer instead of not knowing.
But the answer was in Vietnam. It was 1990 when Heather and her husband Tim made their first trip, carrying 3,000 homemade flyers, seeking information about her parents.
We had a P.O. box in Denver to write to us. Do you know my family? We were separated during the evacuation of Pleiku in 1975.
At first, the Vietnamese government banned her from traveling back to her hometown, Pleiku. No foreigners were allowed.
They just wouldn't give us a yes or no answer. It's always, to tomorrow.
She persisted. Finally, authorities agreed she could go, but without Tim.
The trip up to Pleiku along the highway, there was a lot of little tiny grass huts. And in my mind, I constantly wondered if one of those huts was their home.
Heather distributed hundreds of flyers. They returned home, and the wait began. One by one, letters began arriving from Vietnam. One man offered to find Heather's parents for $10,000. It seemed everyone wanted money.
A lot of them would talk about, just send me a little money for this and that, and I'll go look, and that sort of thing. And so we didn't pay a lot of attention to those kinds of letters, and that's what was on most of the letters.
But then they got a break. Heather and Tim received a letter from a school teacher in Vietnam. He had found their flyer. Mr. Thune was an old family friend. He sent a faded photograph of himself and Heather's father, taken during the war. He became their guardian angel, taking up their search as his own.
Dear Tim Sharp, I borrowed a Honda motorcycle and rode to a number of villages and remote rice fields searching for your wife's family. So far, my search has lasted 45 days.
The other point in that letter was, don't send any money, I will find them. I am like a son in the family, and I remember you, that sort of thing. And so what a relief that was.
He just sounded really sincere of wanting to reunite a family. In this case, it happened to be one of his old buddies.
Dear Tim and Heather, I spent 3 days traveling to Phu Mai. The Red Cross there gave me some good leads. When school lets out, I will be able to travel more. I am resolved not to rest until I succeed.
As each letter arrived, Heather turned to a local Vietnamese restaurant for help. She could no longer speak her native language.
Okay, you have to tell me everything it said.
Dear Tim, I am sorry this letter is delayed. My monthly salary is equivalent to $6 a month. It is difficult to mail even one letter to you. Postage stamps cost half my monthly salary.
I felt bad that I wasn't able to perfectly communicate to him that the sacrifices he was making would be very worth his while.
After an exhaustive year-and-a-half search, success. Tim received a package filled with photographs from Mr. Thune. He had found Heather's parents.
I had always pictured how he's going to get those pictures, and it turned out it was without Heather here.
And that's when Tim called me with the news. He said, well, you better sit down because I have pictures of your family, and there's no mistake.
The photos confirmed an unbelievable fact. The entire family had survived the Holocaust of the war. Her parents, 3 sisters, and 2 brothers were alive.
When I saw the pictures, I cried. I really cried.
The 5 anxious years of searching for their lost family is finally over. But the most difficult time may be ahead. What had the years done to their country and their family? The emotional homecoming when we return.
2020, brought to you by Zero